Okay, thank you for the invitation, Luc. I'm very happy to be here. We will talk about a few of the issues that were raised in the last presentation, especially about asymmetric power relationship between stakeholders and specialization of actors, stakeholders. So my presentation will be in three parts. We'll talk about the moment. The last person who took the floor. Okay, I'll get back to my presentation where I was a few minutes ago at the joy of virtual life under pandemic conditions. Okay, I was telling that cruise ship is to a halt, so I was just showing stock price of a Norwegian cruise line. They went from 55, 60 to $8 a share, and now they're about 15. So just to show the what's happening right now. Everybody is aware of that. So the moment, and we talked about it a bit earlier, is a moment to question tourism, but in a general way, but also cruise tourism. And what I was interested in is how can we question the power relationship between the mobility dependent cruise tourism industry and the destination. So the situation now is that there's no cruise tourism or almost none, and there's also a slight recovery of overnight tourism or stayover tourism. We had it this summer here in Quebec, a little bit in Europe. There's going to be back and forth opening of tourism, but as long as there's no vaccine or any solution to the pandemic, likely cruise tourism will be to a halt. And normal tourism, let's say overnight tourism, might be able to recover. So what we have is an opportunity to look at tourism without cruise tourism. So, and it's only the pandemic that made that possible. And then we can maybe appreciate the real benefit of cruise tourism while it's gone, and see how's life without that kind of tourism. So it's an opportunity to break the path dependency of growth in cruise tourism and try to see if there's other way for certain destinations to develop their tourism and maybe avoid or just go further from cruise tourism. So, like Igor just said, it's about sustainable development. It's a project inspired by an holistic, equitable approach oriented toward a durable future for destination. And that durable future for destination, equitable approach, and holistic approach is quite difficult for some destination that have to deal with mass cruise tourism. The next part is that I wanted to talk is, well, how can we rearrange that asymmetry of power relationship between the cruise tourism industry and destination? I published a paper that I talked about the forced mobility of cruise tourism. So the thing is that what I try to point out here is that cruise tourism they cannot do without destination. So they need space to fix their capital surplus, and that's through production of tourism or cruise tourism space. So I'll explain that. As you can figure, I'm a geographer, so I'm talking about space and capital fixation. There's two ways of fixing capital surpluses for the cruise tourism industry. The first one is by reinvesting in its surpluses in the fleet of ships, their mobile capital. So they're trying to build bigger ships with new technological, I would say sometimes gadget, but in trying to solve the problem of obsolescence. So that's the same thing for every industry. So that's what they're doing by building bigger ships, and trying to change the experience also of the customers. So now you have like mini golf, wave pools, tennis court, whatever. Maybe some of you have been on cruise ship, and you saw from your own eyes what I'm talking about here. So, but still, the boat needs to move somewhere. The boat can't, even if they're trying to develop boats that are in fact part of the vacation, part of the destination. Well, the cruise ship, they need to move, so they need to fight against the force immobility that's brought by the pandemic right now, because they can't go anywhere. So they've tried a few stuff. The airlines have tried it also. Flights to nowhere, so cruise to nowhere. Well, it seems like it's not an option for me. A few reasons, like you still have a lot of people on the boat, and it causes maybe some sanitary problem. And also, even if the cruise to nowhere has existed in the United States for a while, where they will bring tourism to islands, Bermuda, Bahamas, close by the United States, it's still not something that people are looking for. And like I'm just pointing out here, it's an environmental aberration to just take a boat and just go just in the middle of the sea. So people don't want just to stay on the ship. They want destination. So that brings the second way to invest their surpluses. It's they need to invest it in space. And we talked a bit about earlier, that destination tends to put a lot of money into building infrastructure to welcome those boats that are bigger and bigger. So, but then we've seen, due to a lot of maybe a competitiveness environment between cruise corporation, that some cruise corporation they tend to put money into destination also. So they invest with local stakeholders to build infrastructure so they can visit some destination. So they have to do that because they need to have places to go to bring their customers. So one of the things that they've done, they try to do it on their own by building private islands, which was mainly a Caribbean thing. But we can see now in Vanuatu, Abu Dhabi, or Tahiti, they're building a few private islands there to bring their customers. But still, it's like a Disneyland stuff. It's an attraction island. Tourists tend to like that because it's safe, but they still want to go to destination. They want to visit places. They don't want to be in a resort style manufactured space. And also, the cruise company, they need those destinations because part of their business model is to bring people on excursion. That's where they make a lot of their profits. So what I'm trying to say here is that, and I'm repeating it, is that cruise company need to produce tourism space. They need space. They need destination, and our argument is that it's where that the shift of power balance between destination and cruise company lies. That if they need those spaces, well, they're dependent on their mobility, and they're dependent on having space. So this irreversible mobility, meaning that They can't stay in Miami. They can't stay at home ports. They have to move. Means that if the host destination understand that, it may change the paradigm of power relationship between destination and cruise company, because cruise companies relied on that, especially in the Caribbean, to negotiate with the destination, because especially in the Caribbean, where you have a reproducible destination, it's easy for a cruise company to say to Saint Martin, to say to Saint Lucie, well, if I'm not welcome here and in the way I want, I can just move somewhere else. And it happened before, and it's still happening. But like I said, in the past few years, they're investing also in the Caribbean. Harvest Key is an example. They invested also in Dominican Republic. So this mobility asset that they had is less and less important for them. But the main thing is that when they are in a non-reproducible destination, well, they can't use that mobility leverage in negotiation. So that's the thing in that we have in Quebec and the Saint Lawrence River, but that's the thing that also you have in the regional space of the Adriatic Sea. You have mostly non-reproducible destinations. So if the destination or if the region understand that, they have maybe a point there in negotiating operation with cruise companies. So what we're implying is that there's a need to change the mindset, saying that cruise line need destination more than the other way around. And the example gave by Igor, and I'm talking about Venice here, that you have 1.52 million passenger that comes for a few hours in Venice. If they would disappear and you keep the 30 million or so tourists, overnight tourists or day visit tourists, I'm not sure about the importance of cruise tourism in Venice or other destinations who have of overnight tourism. And I'm not talking here about the small Caribbean islands or in the Pacific Islands where they rely on it, totally dependent on cruise tourism. That's another story. They're basically taking an hostage by cruise company. I'm talking about home ports, but also ports of call, which make much less money than home ports that have other alternative in tourism. I gave an example of Slovenia also, 65,000 passengers, but with 5 million euros of benefits. But compared to the 2.09 billions that they receive from foreign tourists, it's just a fraction. And that fraction is the same everywhere. We have it here. I've worked with the port of call of Gaspé in Gaspésie, in eastern part of Canada, for those who knows that Quebec, and they invested millions of dollars for cruise tourism, but they only get like 0.6% of the total benefits of cruise tourism, and 90 compared to their overnight tourism. And if you compare the port of Gaspé, the port of call of Gaspé, compared to the benefits that Quebec and Montreal, which are home ports, gets from cruise tourism, Gaspé and all the ports of call of the St. Lawrence River, they manage to reap about 2% of the benefits. So all the money goes to Montreal, Quebec, and almost nothing to Gaspésie. And for the example of Gaspésie, well, they get their money from overnight tourism. They're not getting their money from cruise tourism. But still, there's a lot of money put in infrastructure and a lot of energy just for 0.6% of benefits. So what I'm saying is that regional and national at the regional and national scales, destination or a group of destination must take advantage of their political and social capital to use and use their irreversible global mobility of the mass cruise tourism industry against them or against it to promote livability. So by resisting, adapting, or cooperating, I've seen, and it's possible for a small community to resist those big companies. It's not because they're transnational, very rich companies that they cannot be resisted. And there's an example in that I've worked in Belize, and also even here in Quebec, where communities said, well, we're not going to get involved with that because it's not beneficial for us, or adapting or cooperating, where people or local stakeholders feel that they're having advantage of doing it. So it's all in the sense to regain the environmental friendly and cultural sustainable cruise tourism. Okay, so what we're talking about, the question we had in the first thing. So if we understand that, like I said, destination or cruise tourism needs the destination more than the other way around, well, it's a shift of power relationship, and there's a lot of reason to critique cruise tourism, mass cruise tourism, and if local stakeholders knows that maybe they can live without it, and that's what the moment is about, is that we're going to experience that. Gaspé had tons of tourism last summer with no cruise tourism, and it's going to be probably the same thing next summer. And a lot of destinations around the world that used to have boats will continue to live and continue to receive foreigners without cruise tourism. So it's a time to reconsider the place of cruise tourism and the destiny of destination and the future of destination. And if they decide after, and it was very interesting. I read the CNN paper with the mayor deputy of Dubrovnik. She gave a talk. She gave her arguments in there, and it's like kind of a reset. Okay, we have the opportunity to come back from low profile or low intensity tourism without cruise tourism and try to develop a new way of doing things. And if for certain communities, cruise tourism doesn't seem to be a good deal, they just should back away from cruise tourism and just live their life without cruise tourism. And if they feel that it's a good deal and they can manage cruise tourism the way they want to manage it, not the way the cruise company wants to manage it, well, that's a different story. So it's up to the destination to see that. So there's things that I've talked about in my paper, especially for the Canadian context, but it could apply also to Europe. So limit ship size. There's it's all up to debate. Aggressive taxation, diminish cruise-oriented investment. So, like for destinations, stop paying for a cruise company to come to see them. They will come anyway. In most of the cases, especially if you have a non-reproducible destination, they will come, and they will be interested to come. And promote regional government. So this is easy for Quebec because all the St. Lawrence River is one province, and it's all under the same kind of governance. Well, Caribbean, it's problematic because you have countries from France, you have department from France, you have from Netherlands also, you have Latin countries, you have people who speak English, whatever. It's very difficult, and it's the same thing for Adriatic regional space. You have a lot of different countries involved, so it's less easier to promote a regional government. So we have, like in Quebec, Cruise of St. Lawrence, where all the destination and ports of call are under the same umbrella, which gives them a lot more power when they need to negotiate with the cruise industry. So each regional space have its own challenges. So the question is open to what about the Adriatic regional space? So that's about it. So if you have question, I will be happy to answer.
Okay, Luc, thank you for this interesting presentation. I also already have a specific question. So you pointed out to the power of destinations itself, um, and perhaps instead of having recovery of the old cruise ship tourism, and the other side is we don't do it anymore. That's the first thing you said, but then perhaps there's something in between. And I think you expressed four conditions under which you could do a new kind of cruise tourism. So limit ship size, aggressive taxation, um, regional governance. Do you need to have a platform for this? Because I'm not so sure if Dubrovnik says we won't do cruise tourism anymore, that the cruise ships will say, okay, then we go to Slovenia or Athens or whatever. Don't you need to have a platform of all the destinations to agree on that, or don't you think that?
Well, that's the problem with the Cruise Tourism Corporation. If you see what they've done in the Caribbean regional space, that's exactly what they do. As soon as some of the territories wanted to regroup to have a better power leverage for negotiation, they started to do the basic divide to conquest strategy. So of course. I've gave the example of cruise of St. Lawrence that we have back home, where everybody speaks for one voice, which is it's quite interesting because the thing is that if they decide to go to another port of call, well, it's all the same group of actors in the sense that everybody works together and trying to negotiate as one person. So there's no, would say, way for cruise companies to try to play one destination against another. So in the Adriatic regional space, the question is how this nation can regroup themselves and try to. But like I said, Dubrovnik is a non-reproducible destination, and that's something that it's difficult also to measure. But still, there's people cruise tourism. They want to go to Dubrovnik, and they will get pressure from their customers to go to Dubrovnik. So they won't just skip Dubrovnik just like that. And that's something that needs to be assessed also, the power of the customers. And that's what I've seen in the Caribbean. They wanted to keep the customers on a private island where the tourists could see the village, and they said to the tourists, no, you cannot go see the village because we're not going there, and because they don't want us and they don't want to blah blah blah. And after a few months, with pressure from the customer, well, Norwegian Cruise Line started to negotiate with the chair lady of that village to try to arrange something so they can bring some tourists. So I I, I don't think it's just a matter of just saying, oh, they won't come because they're not happy. They need to come in a sense. And if especially Quebec City, we have it's unique. Dubrovnik is unique, and customer wants to go there, so they will have some pressure from the customer, and we have to think about that as destination. Oh, I don't hear you.
Okay, thank you. I forgot to unmute myself. Going back to Iger, you have researched for alternatives, but you didn't research no cruise ships anymore. Um, this story of Luc has got some implications for your research, or and I've also seen the question of Tom Goze concerning alternative locations. What do you think about that, Igor?
Yeah, I think no cruise ship was not a viable alternatives because, despite what Luke was saying, cruise ship brings something like 15 to 20% of income to the Venice. And without cruise ship, it will be a major disruptions. At least 6 years or whatever, 4 years ago, they believed that that was impossible. So that's why it was not considered. Though back to Luke's point, yeah, of course, it was very different profile of people who stay in Venice versus cruise ship that bring people for a day. And in many cases, and that was one of the arguments, in many cases, cruise ship were not, people who come with cruise ship were not spending money in Venice. They were just, eating and all that in the ship. But nevertheless, they estimated that cruise ship are bringing a significant portion of income to Venice. As a fraction of overall tourism. So that responds to that question. Now back to Tom's question. Tom is asking, what is the conclusion of our project? Well, first of all, the project was just illustration of methodology. You cannot do more with this bunch of students in like 1 month without funding. But nevertheless, we clearly show that different stakeholders with their value profiles may like different alternative location. We show that two major stakeholders, municipality and citizens and general public, environmentalists, would prefer the same location, while business side would prefer a different location. So that was our conclusion, that environmental consideration and health consideration would require port in one place, while economics in another place. But of course, next phase of the project would be more detailed evaluation and then bringing stakeholders together for negotiation. And this is where sensitivity and uncertainty analysis would work. Yeah, but the goal of MCDA is not necessarily to select what is the best, but rather focused on a couple of the main alternatives and see why different people likes it and why they don't like it, and that provide direction for compromise and negotiation.
Yeah. Okay. Are there other questions from the audience? I don't see raised hands.
Just wanted to add to Igor. Of course, there's impacts if there's no cruise tourism in Venice from one day to another. But the thing is just to see how, from starting to zero now with the situation of the pandemic, trying to get back to cruise tourism and trying to make it less environmental, with less environmental impact, less social impact. So we have this opportunity to maybe reconfigure this relationship that most of the destination had, and the growth was very fast for a lot of destination, and they didn't have the time maybe to assess all the problematics that was involved in going with cruise tourism. And most of the destination will go back to cruise tourism, of course, but maybe in a different way. And then think what the pandemic is all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that fully. Again, COVID changed everything, and it gave us opportunity to change system in a major way.
Yeah. Okay. Having said that, I think we could have again a short break until 4 o'clock, and then we will get some reflections of the local stakeholders, just in order to get to some conclusions how to proceed. But I fully agree with you. Okay, thanks, Igor and Luc, for your contributions. And we will come back in 10 minutes time.
Thank you, Luc.